I sat there at the restaurant table, heat flooding my cheeks, as my little brother gleefully announced to everyone that I'm the broke one of the family. He said it with a cruel grin, loud enough that the nearby tables at Olive Garden could hear. I swear even the waiter paused. My face went red hot. There was a beat of awkward silence among my parents and the few relatives with us, forks frozen in mid-air. All eyes darted to me, then quickly away. I wanted to shrink into my chair and disappear. You know, Alex will never be able to afford a house, right? My brother Jake laughed out, practically choking on his breadstick with delight. At this rate, he'll be living in mom's basement till he's 50. He said it like a punchline to the funniest joke ever. Something inside me cracked, a mix of embarrassment, rage, and hurt pounding in my chest, but I bit down hard on my tongue. I could actually taste blood from how hard I was clenching my jaw, holding back the eruption building inside. Across from me, Mom's face fell. She opened her mouth to scold him, but nothing came out. Dad let out a strained, awkward chuckle as if to play it off, but even he looked away, uncomfortable. Under the table, my hands balled into fists. I stared down at the greasy cloth napkin in my lap because I knew if I looked up I'd either start yelling or burst into humiliating tears. Jake just shrugged innocently, smirking, "What? It's true." As he twirled his fork in pasta like he hadn't just taken a huge dump on my dignity at my own mother's birthday dinner. Alright, let's rewind for a minute so you understand how we got here. I'm the older brother in this story, 32 years old, and my little brother Jake is 29. Despite the age difference, Jake has always been the golden child of the family. Growing up in a middle-class suburb of Chicago, shout out to Naperville, he was the overachiever jock and I was the late-blooming nerd. He could do no wrong, I could seemingly do no right. Our sibling rivalry was never the fun, friendly kind. It was him constantly trying to one-up me and put me down. After high school, Jake went to state and got a business degree, landing a well-paying sales job in Chicago right after graduation. I, on the other hand, meandered through college and ended up with a degree in graphic design. By my mid-20s I was living paycheck to paycheck at a print shop and doing freelance gigs, while Jake was renting a luxury apartment and driving a BMW. Jake never missed a chance to remind me of my struggles. If I mentioned a hard week, he'd smirk that it must be nice not having any real stress, implying my life was easy since I had nothing important going on. Every family gathering, he'd find some way to jab at my financial situation or lack of success. One Thanksgiving, I overheard him joking to our cousins that I'd probably be living with our parents forever. Hearing my own brother basically call me a loser behind my back was a gut punch. The truth is, I did end up moving back in with my parents for a little while when I was 29. My crappy studio's rent went up and I couldn't afford it, so back to mom and dad's I went, tail between my legs. I felt like a failure. Lying in my childhood bedroom, I remember staring at the ceiling one night, absolutely seething with determination. That was my rock bottom. I swore I would claw my way out if it killed me. I was done being the family disappointment. So I hustled. I picked up every freelance design gig I could find, designing logos, building websites, whatever paid, on top of my day job at the print shop. I lived as frugally as possible and saved every penny. It was exhausting. I was working nearly every waking hour. But after many months of grind, I caught a lucky break. I landed a full-time junior designer position at a marketing firm in downtown Chicago. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid decently and had benefits. Finally, a real job. I was over the moon. When I told my family about that job at our next Sunday dinner, Mom literally cried happy tears and Dad gave me a rare proud hug. And Jake? He just smirked, "Congrats, welcome to the rat race," trying to play it cool. But I could tell it irked him that I was no longer the easy loser he'd pegged me as. Once I got my foot in the door, I climbed fast. Turns out all that extra freelance work had leveled up my skills, and I kicked ass at the firm. In 2 years I earned 2 promotions, eventually becoming a senior designer with a small team under me. My salary jumped big time. Suddenly, I wasn't scraping by, I was actually doing really well. I moved out of my parents' place, finally, into a decent one-bedroom apartment in the city. Nothing fancy, but it was mine and it was progress. Even then, Jake kept up his snark and little ways, like he couldn't stand the idea that I was catching up. Little did he know, I was about to blow past him. After weeks of refreshing Zillow and touring listings, I found the one, a gorgeous penthouse condo on the 42nd floor of a new building downtown. 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan and the skyline, a wraparound balcony, the works. The price tag made me lightheaded, but with my savings and income it was just within reach. My heart pounded as I put in an offer, and when it got accepted I nearly screamed. Closing day came and I got the keys. I walked into my empty penthouse and looked out at the Chicago skyline stretching beneath me. I'd made it to the top, literally and figuratively. I sank to the floor and sobbed with joy, finally telling that little voice of failure in my head to shove it. I didn't tell my family right away. I wanted it to be a surprise, and honestly I wanted to relish the secret for a bit. As luck would have it, a couple weeks later was Mom's 60th birthday dinner at Olive Garden. Perfect timing for a big reveal. I decided I'd keep quiet during dinner, then afterward casually invite them to come see my new place. At dinner, I was excited and a bit nervous, trying hard to hide it. I dropped a hint that I had moved to a new apartment downtown, which made Mom go, "Oh really?" But before I could say more, Jake started in. He began loudly pontificating about how crazy expensive city living is, joking that I'd be stuck renting a shoebox forever. I just smiled and said, "We'll see." That's when he hit me with his big proclamation, the one I described at the start of this post, declaring to everyone that I'd never afford a house and would be living in Mom's basement till kingdom come. I cannot overstate how badly I wanted to smack the smug look off his face with the truth right then. My chest was on fire with anger and pride, but I held back. I simply glared and said, "Think what you want, dude." I knew in mere minutes I'd have the last laugh. Soon enough we wrapped up dinner. The tiramisu couldn't arrive fast enough. In the parking lot, I turned to my parents and said, "Hey, as a little birthday treat, how about you come see my new place? It's not far." They looked intrigued and said yes. Jake rolled his eyes but tagged along, clearly unwilling to miss whatever this was. We drove downtown and pulled up to my building, a sleek glass high-rise downtown. As we entered the lobby with its marble floors and concierge desk, I could see my parents were impressed and a bit confused. Jake was frowning, clearly confused by what was happening. I led them into the elevator and hit the button for 42. Jake watched me do it, perplexed. The elevator opened directly into my penthouse foyer, and we stepped into the living room. Mom squealed in delight, and Dad kept murmuring this is unreal as they wandered around in awe. And Jake, he was silent, eyes wide and jaw slack, like he'd seen a ghost. Finally he managed to croak out, This is your place. "Welcome to my humble abode," I said, grinning ear to ear. "Happy birthday, Mom." The next half hour was incredible. My parents were giddy, exploring every room and hugging me repeatedly, just so proud. Jake stayed quiet, still in shock that the brother he once called a failure actually owned this place. He managed to stammer, "How did you afford this?" I just smiled and said, "Hard work and a bit of luck." He nodded, utterly speechless. He left that night quiet and humbled. It must have absolutely killed him to realize how wrong he'd been. A couple weeks later, Jake's cushy life took a turn poetic justice style. His lease was up, and his landlord dropped a bomb, a huge rent hike. Overnight, his fancy West Loop apartment was out of his budget. Suddenly Mr. Big Shot was scrambling for a place to live. I heard through the family grapevine that he was freaking out about money. Then one evening my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. He wanted to come over and talk. I knew exactly what was coming, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't savor it. He showed up the next night, visibly nervous. After some fidgeting, he finally got to the point. His rent had skyrocketed and he was desperate. He asked if he could crash in my spare room for a few months until he found something else. He even offered to pay rent to me. He was pleading, and it was surreal. This same brother had laughed when I was the one needing a place, and now the tables were turned. I raised an eyebrow. "Why should I help you, Jake?" "Because, we're brothers," he said quietly. "I know I was a jerk, but I really need your help." I let out a cold laugh. "Funny, you never acted like my brother when I was struggling. You just kicked me when I was down." He looked down, shame-faced. "I know I was an asshole. I'm sorry, okay? I really am. But I'm your brother and I have nowhere else to go." I shook my head. "You told me I'd never have a place of my own, and now you expect me to let you live in my place." He started to sputter some excuse, but I cut him off. "After the way you treated me? Not a chance, man. My answer is no. Figure it out on your own," I said firmly. He looked like I'd slapped him. He nodded slowly, eyes on the floor. "Okay, I get it," he mumbled. I walked him to the door. Before he left, I couldn't resist twisting the knife just a bit. "Remember when you said I'd be stuck in Mom's basement?" I said, smiling. "Funny how things turn out." He opened his mouth, then closed it. With nothing left to say, he turned and left, shoulders slumped. I shut the door and just stood there, heart pounding. My hands were trembling from the adrenaline of finally standing up to him, but I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. No moral here. It was petty, sure, but it felt damn good. After years of his mockery, when he finally came begging for my help, I just laughed and told him, LOL, no.